brother of Jeffrey Epstein, Mark Epstein, is still living and he is singing like a bird. So the Epstein estate, as everybody knows, dropped a bombshell that the mainstream media is refusing to report. Therefore, we're going to lead every episode with it. And it is that Kanks gave somebody named Bubba a blowjob, and Vladimir Putin has evidence of this, which makes Helsinki and the Alaska bend over make perfect sense. And Mark comes out after this email dump and says, hey, FYI, Bubba's not Bill Clinton, but he doesn't deny the blowjob nor that Putin has evidence of it. Okay. So all the national security MAGA people, all the national security Republicans have a lot of answering to do, because you're clearly putting the armed forces who you claim to love and respect more than anything on the planet, you're putting them in danger, and also allowing Kanks, who gave somebody named Bubba a blowjob, to allow these military members to get on their hands and knees to roll out red carpet for a murderous dictator, Vladimir Putin, who has evidence of Kanks blowing Bubba. So Mark has now, he was on Chris Cuomo last night, and he's still speaking more about his brother's relationship with the president of the United States. So Mark's brother, the most horrific sexual predator, best friends with the president of the United States, and we need to keep applying the pressure. Let's hear from Mark Epstein.
In 2016, I said this publicly before. Jeffrey told me that if he said what he knew about the candidates, they'd have to cancel the election. He didn't tell me what he knew, but Jeffrey definitely had dirt on Trump. And you could see in the emails, Trump could deny it all he wants, but it's pretty clear. I mean, everything Trump says is a lie.
But that's not what you were talking about.
It's provable that he was in Jeffrey's office. He said he wasn't in the house. It's provable he was there. He said everything he says is a lie.
Pumps.
Everything he says is a lie. But what is so fascinating to me is all these MAGA conspiracy theorists who now have the evidence from Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein from decades ago are now like, well, you know, it's a Democratic hoax. Like there's a time machine that goes back and puts him with Bubba. There's a time machine that puts his mark on the door. And then they have him at the White House on Thanksgiving of 2017, and they're willing to dismiss all of these allegations of pedophilia. It tells me how broken these people are. And I don't know if it's because their pastors do this and their churches do it, so they're kind of immune to it. But you would think pedophilia would be a bipartisan. Absolutely not. It was in England, but it seems to be fine here, because all Trump has to say is, oh, the fake news.
Yeah, but don't you think to some regard that as a species, we've kind of been primed for this moment? When you think about the Catholic Church and the decades-long thousands of victims, the cover-ups involved with that, if that were a business, they would be put out of business. But the Catholic Church still continues on despite the most horrific child rape operations and cover-ups you've ever seen. And so it's an interesting moment that I think a lot of things kind of happened before. And I think it's probably the public is kind of primed, oh, this happens.
Right.
For years, we have called sexual abuse materials, we've referred to it as kiddie porn, as though that is just a flavor. And that was something culturally and societally we all did. And this is a moment, kind of like the Me Too movement. This is a moment where rubber is hitting the road, where we're having to call out Moses Mike Grinder Johnson on his family values, pro-children, pro-Christian. Jesus Christ and I are BFFs. He is voting to protect pedophiles. But Mark Epstein, who clearly from the emails was very close to his brother all the way up into his death. And I also of note, Mark Epstein has also said he does not believe that Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide, you guys. Lawyers that we have interviewed on this podcast that represented the victims do not believe that Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide. So let's think about it in its entirety like this. Mark Epstein and Jeffrey Epstein, tight brothers, bizarrely emailed all the time. So we have all these digital records of all of this stuff. Jeffrey knew he could destroy Donald Trump. Mark knows that, believes that Jeffrey Epstein was killed in prison. That's Mark's belief. The person who was in charge of the DOJ when this happened was Trump. So despite what could be a threat on his life, he is maintaining that Trump was compromised. My brother had all of the goods and he could ruin this man. He is not backing off of that when he's all but said he believes that Donald Trump was killed in prison. He does not believe it's suicide. So that's incredibly Jeffrey Epstein was killed in prison. That's really, really telling to me. Here is another bit from Mark Epstein on Chris Cuomo last night. Play the clip.
What I do want to talk about is I've been recently told the reason they're going to be releasing these things and the reason for the flip is that they're sanitizing these files. There's a facility in Winchester, Virginia, where they're scrubbing the files to take Republican names out of it. That's what I was told by a pretty good source.
That surprises me absolutely zero. What surprises me is this wasn't done originally in May when Pam Bondi originally got the files and knew Trump was mentioned over 1,000 times. It doesn't surprise me. What I can only hope is other countries that have these materials through law enforcement channels and victims, that they will be able to right the ship, because there is not a doubt in my mind the corrupt Pam Bondi, Dan Bongino, Kash Patel, they will do whatever it takes to cover this up for Trump and the Republicans, because he's now saying, oh yeah, release the files, only Democrats are in there. Sounds like he knows the books are cooked to me.
Yes. And I mean, we all know that Kash Patel's FBI is an absolute joke. I think the entire evidence that is rolled out, this is my personal opinion, since the murder of Charlie Kirk is weird. The lack of follow-up of any reporting on that, I think that whole thing is weird. I think it's very obvious that this administration, we want the economy and the job reports to look a certain way, so we're going to manufacture that. We want the Epstein files to look a certain way, so we're going to manufacture that. My problem with the other countries that may have this information is that some people from those countries, powerful people or governmental officials, could also be implicated in it.
Right.
And also, do they want to give up the goods? Something that the American media refuses to report upon is the link with Jeffrey Epstein and the Israeli government. And Virginia Giuffre's book, she talks about a prime minister of a country, and everybody believes it is Ehud Barak of Israel, that violently raped her. And this just gets completely diminished in the American press. So, but when you think about it, it's important that we have clear eyes about this. Why is Donald Trump giving a blank check to Benjamin Netanyahu? Why is he doing that? Why is he allowing Vladimir Putin to put a shock collar on him, get his balls, keep him in the Kremlin, and walk him all over the global stage? It starts making sense. And when we know that for the last 10 years, we have had intelligence people that have said there is a lot of compromising information on Donald Trump that very powerful people have. This is it. I mean, we thought it was the PP tape. And as far as I'm concerned, that could still exist. Mm-hmm. I mean, I still think that that could probably be a thing. But I think this situation with the blowjob, nobody's denying it. Trump is the most litigious person on the planet, you guys. And his reaction to the blowjob thing, to try to post on Twitter, he and Melania kissing and holding hands, tells me the blowjob took place. Because this is a guy that he is so thin-skinned. He goes bananas over everything. He wants to sue everybody. He's never talked about wanting to sue Mark Epstein about this Bubba thing. It is loose-lipped. And then he's listening, you know, like any old queen does. He's listening to Phantom of the Opera, blaring it. And then it brings me to this, you guys. This guy cannot beat these homoerotic allegations. Everywhere you go, he talks about men being hot. Mm-hmm. He talks about Arnold Palmer's cock. Look at his decorating projects. I'm just telling you, this man, I mean, not a great example of a queen, but an old crazy queen. I keep getting these vibes over and over again. Play the clip.
We met them all handsome. They look like Tom Cruise. They really do. I don't want to be a wise guy and say, but taller. I'm not going to say that. No, they're perfect specimens. I mean, these guys are like from a movie. I could take everyone, put them in a movie.
All right, let's take a brief moment to hear from our sponsors. Listeners, I have to tell you, Pumps and I both have gotten very serious about our personal security in our homes and in our workspaces, and we trust our safety and security with Simply Safe. It is real security because it can stop the crime before it starts. I personally trust Simply Safe because it's been proven to keep my home, family, property, whatever is important to me, it keeps it safe. Because here's the thing, like somebody's trying to get into your house, Simply Safe starts talking to them and tells them police are on the way and prevents the crime before the guy gets in.
Well, and that's just such a great peace of mind, especially when we're traveling, to know even when you're gone, they're going to take care of an intruder before that person gets in your house.
And listeners, exclusively right now, we are giving you early access to Simply Safe's Black Friday sale, where you can save 60% off on any new system. This is their biggest deal of the year. There will never be a better time to get a real security system for your home. Go to simplysafe.com/IHIP. Again, go to simplysafe.com/IHIP. And you guys, we could put together an hour-long clips of him talking about the male body. And when you think about this administration and all the homoeroticism in it, the photoshopped images of him with muscles, and all of these men in the MAGA movement have very homosocial relationships. It's all of this bro culture, propping each other's masculinity up, constantly talking about testosterone levels, constantly talking about masculinity. And I ask you to think about the men in your lives that are really comfortable and confident. How often do you hear them talk about even being men?
Right.
Even that, even the word masculine, it really doesn't come out of their mouth. For example, my father, still alive, great guy, served in Vietnam, never talks about Vietnam, never talks about masculinity, but is a total alpha male. But I never have to hear any of this stuff, doesn't talk about other men being specimen, but he's confident enough, to do it. But it's just, I just think he's not beating these Bubba allegations.
Well, let's face it. The YMCA theme song for his campaign, that makes a lot more sense now. And remember when he was giving the microphone a blowjob?
Oh,
it didn't look like it was his first time.
there was a familiarity.
There was a technique that I kind of envied in the moment. So
really, perhaps.
Just saying, it wasn't his first rodeo. And here's the thing. Grindr crashes wherever the Republicans all congregate. So I think that's one of the reasons that they're just sliding over this, because so many of them in their own private lives do this shit.
We have been whistleblowing for several months now about the MAGA DL, down low, demon queen problem. And it's a burden, listener, being right all the time.
So hard.
It is really hard being right all the time. But the fact that this has built up to Vladimir Putin having evidence of Trump giving Bubba a blowjob. And there's a lot of information about who Bubba could be. Ghislaine Maxwell had a horse named Bubba. Bill Clinton's nickname is Bubba. There's some Texas son of some oil, swinging dick, MAGA guy who goes by the name Bubba. There's a lot of options. But the fact that we have been whistleblowing about MAGA's homo DL demon queen problem, and now we have the national security Republicans that literally almost cry when the national anthem comes on. That
Yes.
Every single time they're on fucking CNN or MSNBC, they have to wear an American flag lapel because they're so insecure in their patriotism. That they are incapable, because they're so indoctrinated into this low T cult, that they're incapable of saying, hold up a second. He has always acquiesced and been completely obsequious to all of Vladimir Putin's requests and whims. He always has looked like a low T puss boy on the global stage with Vladimir Putin. And you're telling me that Mark Epstein and Jeffrey Epstein openly talked, and Bannon knows about this too, about this blowjob. And nobody is denying it. In fact, Mark just came in to say, hey, the Bubba that I was talking about with the blowjob that Putin has evidence of wasn't Bill Clinton, different Bubba. And so this DL Demon Queen theory that we have just keeps proving to be more and more and more the case. All right, listen. I want to say to all members of the LGBTQ plus community, we are your allies, and people who have to journey through this nut job country with all of the bigotry towards your community. And maybe you're not completely able to be out. We're not talking about you. We're talking about these men that vilify your community, bully your community, use your community as a weapon to get their religious base to vote against you, as someone to hate, a group of people to scapegoat. And I believe at the core of this are a lot of people who are insanely jealous of the liberation and the emotional work that your people in your community have done to get here, to actually have a parade that's called Pride Parade, that you can go from the societal expectation that if you are that, you should feel shame. And that we've advanced so much beyond that to say, no, you shouldn't feel shame. You should feel pride. And these DL Demon Queens are really doing a lot of damage to the civil rights that have happened in your community, not to mention all of the other marginalized communities. But we are going to keep blowjob mania at the top of the news cycle because it is a national security issue that corporate media is completely ignoring. And so, Pumps, tell them about our book.
Life is a Lazy Susan of shit sandwiches. It is the #1 stocking stuffer in America. And everyone says it's the best book. So buy it for your loved ones and friends. It's also available on audiobook.
Subscribe, like. We'll be back later with more news.